and welcome to the How To Girl TV. I'm Carol Dodsley, better known as the How To Girl. And on today's show, we've got a gentleman joining us all the way from America. Quite a lot of my guests seem to come from overseas. Even the Brits come from overseas. But we've got a guest joining me today called Mike Michalowicz. And Mike is the entrepreneur behind 3 multi-million-dollar companies and the author of The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur and the brand new Pumpkin Plan. He is a globally recognized entrepreneurial advocate, and he's a small business columnist for the Wall Street Journal and hosts the Business Makeover segment on MSNBC's Your Business. And today Mike's going to join us to talk about the Pumpkin Plan and how using this book, which I've already read because I've already got my copy, you really can exponentially grow your business. Just by making a few small tweaks to your business, you can have a star business. And Mike's going to explain to you what it's all about and why it's called the Pumpkin Plan as well. Plus, I have something very special that I just know Mike is going to say yes. But Mike doesn't know he's going to say yes to it because I haven't asked him yet. I'm going to ask him at the end of the interview. But during the interview, we're going to have some fun as well. So hold on tight. Come and join us as we go over and say hello to Mike. Watch out for the section where we get down and dirty asking Mike some very personal questions. And the surprise at the end that fingers crossed, I've decided, yeah, I'm sure Mike will say yes to that, but I don't know because I haven't asked him yet. I'm going to ask him live on the interview. So let's go over and say hello to Mike. So welcome, Mike. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Carol. A big hello from across the pond.
I know, isn't it brilliant that we can talk to people anywhere in the world nowadays?
It is absolutely fabulous. This is one of my favorite parts about technology is that we all can connect.
Yeah, that's it. So, Mike, I've given a brief introduction before I welcomed you on the show, but just you tell the audience about yourself. How did you get into being an author? You know, you've got 2 books. I know that you're also the founder of Obsidian Launch, where you help other entrepreneurs to sort of exponentially turn themselves into big growth companies. What got you into all of this?
So it's an interesting path, I guess. I started my first business after working at a small computer store, and I just got frustrated of working there. I didn't want to be doing all the work, and then the boss was making the money. So one night I had a few too many beers, and liquid courage caused me to quit that night and start my company the next day.
Cool.
And I then went on to build businesses. It was hard, but ultimately they were, knock on wood, very successful. I built and sold 2 companies. And then I started, after selling my second company, I came into a lot of wealth and thought that I was Midas. Anything I touched turned to gold. I was a total genius. I believed my own crap, which is a mistake that I think some of us fall into, but I really believed it. Ends up I'm not Midas. Surprise, surprise. I'm just a guy from New Jersey. Here's my New Jersey shirt. That's all I am. And I started investing in these companies. Obsidian Launch did that. Started investing in companies and wasn't doing it successfully. I was not, they call them angel investors, at least here in the States. And I was really a death investor. I'd invest in something and I would kill it. And that's when I started writing the books. I said, let me get back to what worked for me, which was bootstrapping, building a company when I had no money, doing very out-of-the-box things. That's what worked. So I wrote my first book, which was The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur.
Which I have a copy of here.
Oh, which I love.
Personally signed by you.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And wrote that first book. I started spreading the word on it. I put the same amount of effort in making this book successful like I would any other business that I had. It took time, but it built more and more momentum, and it has brought about my second book, The Pumpkin Plan. And now this is my career. I love it. I love being an author. And Yeah, so that's how I became an author. Is I have all these things I've experienced, and now that I'm learning from entrepreneurs like yourself, that I'm compiling and putting back out to the world. I want everyone to know all the things it takes to be a successful entrepreneur, a happy entrepreneur.
I love the way when you started to introduce yourself there and you said you built this successful business and then you got this I'm Midas. That is
Yeah,
something that can actually happen to a lot of people, isn't it? Something works, so you think, oh, I can do anything, I'm Superman. And I think it's really great that
yeah.
you've just shared you weren't Superman and it didn't work and you didn't just go out
No,
there.
you know what the biggest ingredient is luck, and I never ever believed that. But for me, my second company, we did computer crime investigation, and in the States, I'm sure you heard of the case, the Enron trial. My company, among a few others, was the ones who facilitated the forensic examination on the defense side. It was a huge project for us. And I was like, wow, I was so smart. I landed Enron. But the fact is, I didn't make Enron happen. I didn't make those guys do all the criminal stuff they did. Enron was not influenced by me whatsoever. It just happened. I was just extremely lucky to be at the right place when they needed help, when that case needed some investigators involved. And that was my breakthrough project that opened me up to tons of other opportunities. So, really, in retrospect, I was at the right place at the right time. That was only 1% of the formula. 99% was what Enron did to make their problems happen, and it just happened to match up with me. That's all luck. It really is.
But it's also that match-up, isn't it? Because if you hadn't been the right person doing the right things with the right skills and knowledge and probably with the right personality, Enron wouldn't have wanted you involved. They'd have soon got rid of you.
Right, right. We can influence that 1%. I mean, we cannot influence the world around us. So we can't influence when the next Enron's going to happen or the next big opportunity out there that's perfect for you is going to happen. The only thing we can do is perfect our little piece, our 1%, and constantly perfect it so that we are absolutely ready when the opportunity presents itself to grab it, to service it better than anyone else can. We just have to recognize that if our business fails, it might not have been because of us. That outside 99% may have not happened. And if our business succeeds, recognize that there's this greater outside stuff that's going on. But the only thing we have influence is over that 1%. So we always have to be ready at all times. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I mean, obviously, you've written the pumpkin plan now. I started off with your toilet paper entrepreneur, which is really about if you've got nothing and you're starting out, here's some steps. Go and do this and get yourself going. Because we know that, 80% of companies that start up never ever succeed.
Right.
And it might even be more than that. It's only a tiny minority that
Yep.
really keep going and actually break through that I'm struggling, how the heck do I pay my mortgage this month barrier.
Yeah, yeah. I think the reason many businesses fail is because the entrepreneurs who started that business started it because they want to make money, not because they want to serve something that they believe in. And the problem with trying to just go to make money is there's other people, competitors in your industry that are doing that because they love to do it. You're just trying to make money. They do it because they love it. The people that do what they love, work harder, work deeper, are more committed, will go the extra mile, and those are the ones that start standing out to their clients, and those are the ones that take off. So it kind of sounds crazy, but the formula for success, that starting point that I talk about in the toilet paper entrepreneur, is do what makes you happy, do what brings love and passion to you, do what gives you energy, because that passion will bring about persistence. And persistence is the key element to the ultimate success. You'll find ways to make money doing what you love. But the first thing is get rooted in what do you love to do. That's the only thing that will see you through for the long term and make you stand out.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I teach in my mentoring programs and when I'm doing VIP days is it's about core desire. And I learned about that from a gentleman called Jack Zufalt, who's also an American. If that core desire isn't there, everything's a struggle. But when it is there, that passion that I love doing this lights me up, knowing that I'm helping other people lights me up. It just makes that massive difference. And you do talk about these sorts of things in your latest book, The Pumpkin Plan, that only actually came out a couple of weeks ago, didn't it?
It did. It came out July 5th. So as of recording this, about 2-3 weeks ago, and when I talk about the seed, so it's all pumpkin analogies, pumpkin farming. Um, the seed to success is more than just passion. That is a core part of it.
Yeah.
But there's two more things I talk about in the pumpkin plan. If we do what we're passionate about and customers don't want it, you can't sell it. So I mean, it's so obvious, but a lot of us forget about it. So you first have to find out what you're passionate about, but then you need to define what do customers want and see where your passion and that client interest intersects. Between those two is the start of a potentially highly successful business. Many entrepreneurs do inherently get this concept, but they stop there. The problem of just doing what you love and customers want it is you, as the entrepreneur, are now trapped into doing it. It's the time for money trap. The only way to grow that business is you must work harder and harder and harder. But there's only so much time in the day. There's only so much of you to go around, so it's limited. The final part, the final overlapping segment that we need to address to have a very colossal or scalable business is systemization. Step one, what's your passion? Step two, what's the intersection with client demand? Step three is, can you systemize it? And what I mean by systemizing is when you are sleeping, Carol, can your business identify and land a prospect, convert that prospect to a customer, collect the money, deliver the product or service you have to offer, and then have the customer give positive feedback. If all those pieces can happen while you're sleeping, you now have a very scalable business, something that's systemized completely and can grow exponentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that is so important. So many, like you say, people start and it's time for money. And they price on hourly rates
Yeah.
and it's like, no, if you that's not a business, that's a job. You know, you're just changed who you're working for. You're now working for yourself, but actually that's much harder than working for an employer because there's only you that can pay yourself. But when you've got those systems, when you add multiple income streams, that like yourself, you've got books that sell. You don't need to be there to sell your books. If you've got e-products, or there's a whole range of things people can do, isn't there, to actually bring those things into their business.
Cut out while you were saying that, so I just heard, is that true? And I don't know what you said. So I guess technology is not 100% there yet across the pond, at least.
No, you've turned into an alien on screen.
I'm losing you. Oh, this is unfortunate.
Oh
Can you say it one
no!
more? Say it one more time.
You've turning into an alien.
Oh, I'm turning into an. Now I can hear you when you say I'm turning into an alien. Oh, this is horrible. All right.
You're sorry. Looks like I'm watching Doctor Who.
Should we?
Shall we start again, or shall we?
Disconnect and reconnect?
Yeah. Okay. Hello. Do you want to go for audio, or do you want to stay on video? Your video's really not very clear.
Yeah, maybe we just go audio.
Shall we go audio?
Yeah.
What a shame that we can't still see you talking to us, but we can still hear you. And it's the content that is important for people. You know, they don't really need to see your face, do they, Mike?
No, plus, they'll pine to meet me if they keep seeing me. So
Exactly. So yeah, we were talking about the fact of systemizing before you rudely turned into Doctor Who. And actually, whilst we're talking about that, do you prefer Dallas or Dynasty?
I prefer neither, if that's permitted. I was never into any of the soap operas. If I had to pick one, I would pick Dallas just because I know there was a JR, but that's all I know.
And do you prefer boobs or bottoms?
I guess that's a great question. I guess bottoms.
You guess bottoms.
I don't know. I'm a man, so I think I evaluate everything constantly. Hopefully not in a pervy way, but yeah. So I'll say bottoms.
And if there was one habit that you have that your wife could eradicate from your life, what would it be?
It would be saying the word awesome. I say awesome all the time, which is totally abused here. I don't know in England if it's the same, but here in the U.S., everyone says that's awesome. That's awesome. And I say it ad nauseum now, and my wife would eradicate that immediately if she could.
And dogs or cats?
Dogs. I have one.
What sort of dog do you have?
a mutt. She's a blend of many things, mostly a hound, and she's an adult rescue dog that was abandoned, and she's a big member of our family, I guess you could
Oh,
say.
brilliant. Yes, I've got two rescues myself.
Oh, brilliant. What
Then
kind?
I've got a boxer cross and an American bulldog.
Yeah, beautiful,
And they
beautiful.
usually join me on video at some stage, but they won't be joining me today because we're not on video.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, let's get back to the pumpkin plan and how people can build and grow a business. Let's share some of your really amazing strategies and your concepts. But just tell me first, because some people are probably thinking, look, why are we talking about pumpkins? I thought we were talking about business.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was a metaphor, an analogy that came up to me in my first business. And what happened was, Carol, I hired a business coach, and he told me after evaluating my business that, like many entrepreneurs, I was making certain mistakes and repeating those patterns. And he said if I simply changed about 5% of my business where the mistakes were, that my business would start responding with explosive growth. And he said this is true of any natural organism. Plants are the same way. If you just change a few things of how you water the plant or treat the plant, it responds with explosive growth. So businesses, since they're made up of people at the end of the day, there's a person or people behind it, they're natural organisms. And if we change the way we're watering them, as an analogy, the business responds with explosive growth. And so I went on to study, of all things, pumpkin farming. And found that a small faction of pumpkin farmers, they call themselves the Lords of the Gourds, they grow colossal pumpkins. By changing a few things, the pumpkins grow in a magnitude of about 100 times bigger than an ordinary pumpkin. And the parallels to business are uncanny.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've read your book, so I can see that. I just thought it was important to explain to people, this isn't about growing pumpkins, this is about growing your business, but it is an amazing thing to watch how they really do, they are the same. It's
Mhm.
like you've got in yours the seed. One of the bits that I love is about not firing, but sort of weeding out the not so good clients that you've got. This is one of the scariest things that you can ever tell a business owner to do, but it's also one of the most powerful, isn't it?
Yes. What I suggest business owners do, Carol, is take your list of existing clients, assuming you're established to some degree, and maybe it's a list of 10 clients, maybe it's a list of 10,000, I don't know, but list your clients and sort them by revenue over the last 12 months or perhaps the last 24 months. And the idea here is that your best customers show their appreciation by spending money with you. The more often they buy from you, their actions are indicating they like or love what you have to offer. A lot of us entrepreneurs actually listen to people's words. We ask someone, what do you think of my new product? Oh, says the prospect, that's great. I would buy hundreds of these. What do you think of my service? Oh, it's fantastic. I would use that all the time. And we believe that's the truth. But words really or rarely are the truth. Actions are. So when a customer says, I love something, I encourage entrepreneurs to say, well, I'll take a deposit right now. I'll watch how they behave and see if it's consistent. So the first thing is sort your clients by revenue. The second thing is look at that same client list and determine how much you like the client. They spending money with you means they like you, but perhaps when the phone rings and it's one of your big revenue generating customers, it still may make you cringe. Maybe you don't like their personality. Maybe they're very demanding unfairly. So maybe they're not your best customers. Ultimately, it's the combination of them, the volume of money they spend with you, plus your appreciation for them that ranks the best customers. But it also sorts out the worst customers, the ones who often spend the least with you and also make you cringe when you pick up the phone. You maybe even loathe them. The key to success for an extraordinary entrepreneur is to eradicate and remove those bad customers. And I'm not saying like you have to just, be rude to them, but perhaps turn them on to your competition. Let your competition struggle with these bad customers. Maybe raise your prices so that's no longer fit for your weakest customers. Perhaps enter, or at least purport to enter into agreements with other clients that prohibit you from working with these bad customers. The thing is, your worst customers inevitably generate the least revenue for you, but often take inordinately large amounts of time from you. So when you get rid of these poor customers, it frees up a tremendous amount of time and rarely compromises much of your revenue. With this additional time you now have, Carol, you can go back to your top customers and serve them better. Or you can look at your top customers and spend the time necessary marketing to customers just like them. At the end of the day, if you take your very favorite, best revenue generating customer that you love, one of those top customers, if you clone them 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, any business that clones its best customers will grow exponentially. It represents dramatic growth. So that's the method of the system. We need to get rid of the bad customers and go out and start cloning our best customer.
Yeah. And like I said before I asked that question, it's one of the most scary things for people to do, especially if somebody is perhaps at a stage where they think they don't have enough customers, and oh my goodness, if I get rid of those, then I'm going to go out of business. But you just mentioned there that actually they're making space for something new to come in as well, aren't they?
Yeah, you need to open space. That is what you just explained is the most common trap, is I need a customer. In our minds, as a struggling entrepreneur, means the next customer, regardless of what they require, if it doesn't match what I do, it doesn't make a difference. The next person that offers money, I'm going to take. If you look at planting pumpkins, as a colossal pumpkin starts taking off, the colossal farmer pays all her attention on that pumpkin. Conversely, an ordinary farmer, the struggling farmer, if you will look at the sprouts around it and turn his back to the colossal pumpkin, so his bum is facing the pumpkin while he's now trying to grow this little inadequate pumpkin. The funny thing is, the colossal pumpkin starts suffering because it's not getting any attention. It's not being watered appropriately. It's not being cared for. The weeds aren't being pulled out from around it. Well, the same thing happens with struggling entrepreneurs. That new customer comes in, it's like, oh my God, there's more money. We turn to face this new quote-unquote opportunity. That's often these distractions are called opportunities. We label them as opportunities. But we have to recognize we are proverbially putting our bum in the face of what we do best. So we need to be very focused on what we do best to the exclusion of all the distractions, even if it's labeled as a new customer. If it's not a perfect fit for what we do best, we cannot do it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is very, very important. Whether somebody's an established business or whether they're a startup, you have to go for your best customers, and not only in terms of money, like you said, relationships are very important. You know, if you're pulling your hair out every time you work with somebody, you're really not going to enjoy your business and you're not going to be growing it.
That's absolutely correct. And now I want to change my answer. It's boobs over bottom. Did
someone just walk past the window?
Yeah, I cannot get the male genes out of me.
Oh dear, I love it. Now, in your book, the Pumpkin Plan, you've got 14 chapters in total. And each one of them, I mean, what I love about it is, it's fun read. It's not a very boring, oh my God, it's a business book and now I've got to try and struggle through and work out what he's trying to say in here. You know, you've got a very good way of writing that keeps people's attention. And you use a lot of stories as well, but not all your own stories. You use stories about how other people have done things as well in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, storytelling is potentially one of the most important skills any entrepreneur can have, not just an author, any of us. When we can paint a picture in someone else's mind, we start wielding influence in a good way. So when I did computer networks, instead of me, which is such a boring subject already, I'm getting a little sick. When I would go to a client and say, I plug in your computer, through Category 5 cable, we use an Ethernet topology. All that stuff is like so heady and boring, people start throwing up in their own mouth. So instead, what I learned very early on is to share stories. And I would go to a client and say, yes, we set up your computers. Can you imagine heading home an hour early and having a margarita with your family? Well, you're going to, because the computer network we set up is that efficient. I would tell stories about, instead of Ethernet topology, about how laser lights basically shoot across the wire at lightning speed. And just give very pictorial and story-oriented stories. And what happens is it becomes very memorable for clients too. It's enjoyable to experience because it's pictorial, but it also becomes very memorable for them. It's a great way of wielding positive influence with clients and getting them more engaged with you.
Yeah. And I think the way you've just explained that has probably answered a question that I get a lot, and I know a lot of people struggle with. When somebody says tell stories, they sit there and it's like, but what story? I don't have any stories. I haven't done anything spectacular. It's not about finding a story. It's about looking at the description of something and turning it into a story, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and if you can't think of a story in the moment, you can ask your client to tell a story. And this is the secret. Ask them, what would it be like if? That's the question. What would it be like if you bought this computer system? And then the client starts wielding their own story. Well, I think I would have time to sit back and actually review these reports I'm doing. You know, and every Friday, I might sneak out 2 or 3 hours early. And they start painting their own picture in their head. So if you are in a moment where the opportunity presents itself to go into story mode, you can let your client share. Just ask them, what would happen if? What would it be like if? It's a great way of invoking stories.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And like I say, to understand that stories are not about you having to write something in your head about what you did yesterday and how that fits in. There's stories about what you're offering and the difference your product or service is going to make for your clients.
Exactly.
And it comes down to that, don't sell the features, sell the benefits.
Oh, always sell the benefits. No one gets the features. No one buys your stuff or my stuff for the features. They buy for the pain relief it's going to provide. No one buys aspirin because of the 1% of whatever active materials in there. They buy it because they want to get rid of a headache. So you sell headache relief, the benefit. You don't sell whatever the medoxamoxamol agent is that causes it.
Yeah, exactly. In the pumpkin plan, I mean, I know I have my favourite part. Do you have a favourite part or favourite chapter?
I do. And it's actually it's the first chapter. It's the opening story about the one nut guy. And the reason I love that story, it's absolutely true, but it ties back to a turning point in my business. And what the story is when I hired my first business coach, his name is Frank. I still work with him today. He told me a story of where I was headed if I kept doing what I was doing in my business. He basically said, Mike, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to retire sitting in a rusty lawn chair, regretting the life you lived. And then he says, and you'll have one nut, by the way. He just added that little bonus. And I was like, oh, this is horrible. And then he started helping me in fixing my business. It was only years later as I started writing the book, I asked Frank, I said, I never asked you, why did you share that story, what I call the one nut story? And he goes, he's worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs, and he said, I have found that very few people, almost no one, is willing to change to something new because it's scary to change to something new. There's a lot of comfort in just knowing, in repeating what we've done because at least we're comfortable and familiar with it. It may not be serving us, but there's comfort in that familiarity. So he says, the only way I've been able to change people's behavior is to make them more afraid of the path they're currently on than the fear that's generated by making the change. So he goes, when I told you that one nut story, he goes, I wanted to make you so terrified of what you were doing today that you were willing to make the changes that I was going to share with you. And I did. It scared me. So that first chapter, you'll see I talk about the traps of entrepreneurship, the two common traps. Time for money is one, and then never, the one more syndrome. If I just had one more client, if I just had one investor. Those are the two most common traps. And I wanted the reader to get so afraid of that in themselves that they were willing to listen to the rest of the book and make the leap, the fearful leap of change. And if that fearful leap of change was less fearful than staying status quo, I knew this book would successfully help people.
And I think you've just hit something there. And I'm so glad that's your favorite chapter as well, because it is people. I work with a lot of clients and it's like, oh, I'm struggling and I don't know what to do. And you give some information and you say, right, okay, this week I want you to do this. Oh no, I'm too scared. Can't do that. But like you say, if their fear or the pain of staying where they are gets bigger than their comfort zone, they will move outside of it. It's something we talk about a lot. People are in their comfort zones, even if it's uncomfortable. I have clients who spend their whole life or their whole time before we start working together struggling. They don't know where the money's coming from. They don't know how to get their clients. They're doing stuff that they can't deal with. They're in overwhelm. They're procrastinating. But it's comfortable because it's familiar. But they don't look at it the way you just said about, well, yeah, just think, if you stay there, what are you going to feel like in 20 years' time when you're retired?
Yeah, and many of us are waiting for that pot of gold at the end of a very dark rainbow, right? The drudgery we subject ourselves to in hopes of that one day moment. And I've had the privilege of connecting with so many different entrepreneurs, but what I find the most interesting are the people who are finally retired or on their deathbeds even. The feedback they give is, I wish I was truer to myself. I wish I pursued the happiness part of business and not the money part of business. I wish I got out of the drudgery and really made the leap early. And many, ironically, this is the funniest thing. Ironically, as people are further along in their entrepreneurial careers, the more entrenched they become. The more they think they're getting closer to freedom, the more entrenched in their routines they become, and the further they come, they separate from that potential ultimate freedom that they're pursuing.
Yeah, absolutely. You see a lot of people, don't you? And they're just all the time focused on this one pathway, and they're not getting out of it. But they keep on and they keep on, which is great that they've got that determination. But sometimes you need to sort of turn a corner, or, like you say, take the weeds out from around the big pumpkin and stop facing your bum at it. Turn around and look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was I think I have in the book, basically every quarter, every 3 months, I sit down and evaluate my business, and I suggest every entrepreneur does this. It only takes a few hours to do this. You simply ask yourself, over the prior 3 months, what has been working and what has not been working, and you sort these things out. If something hasn't been working, it is fruitless to work at it harder, because now it's not going to work harder. Simply determine what's been working and expand it, those big pumpkins, and whatever's not working, get rid of it. Get off your plate. If it hasn't worked in 3 months and you put all your effort into it, surely isn't going to work in 6 months or 9 months. It's fruitless.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It's not about losing determination and quitting. It's about checking in that what you're doing is working. It doesn't mean that your end result will never appear. It just means you don't quite do it that way. Move that bit out and do it slightly different way. Use a different watering can, so to speak.
That's beautifully said. I agree 100%.
Yeah, exactly. So if somebody's, obviously, again, like I say, I've been through your book, but somebody going through the book, is it important that they read every chapter, or is it a book where they can pick it up and they can just look at one bit and put that into action?
Yeah, so I feel this book must be read from start to finish and implemented in that method. It builds similar to a pyramid. You need to have the foundation of the perfect seed before you start growing a giant pumpkin. When it comes to pumpkin farming, ordinary pumpkin farmers buy the least expensive seeds they can get. It's a quantity game. The more seeds you plant, the more pumpkins you'll grow. The problem with the ordinary pumpkin farmer is generic ordinary seeds will never yield a giant pumpkin. So if you skip the stage of growing your business in the seed selection, you go right to the watering phase, if you will. You can water a generic cheapo seed as much as you want. It will never grow. So the book spells out the formula. It's 7 kind of foundational steps, and if you do it in sequence, it is the formula for success. And one thing that's interesting, there's no guarantee. Like if someone follows this book, I will not guarantee their success, that they'll have this wildly, colossally successful company. The only guarantee I'll give is that if they don't follow the formula, if they stay the ordinary path, they will never have a colossal success. You see, if you follow this formula, it does yield colossal pumpkins. It does yield colossal businesses. But just like in farming, sometimes there's bad weather. Sometimes disease and blight comes through and destroys the plants. Well, sometimes in business, the economy, the environment doesn't match the business. It doesn't mean the formula doesn't work. It just means the environment didn't line up that time. But colossal pumpkin farmers never give up on the formula. If their plant doesn't make it that year, the next year they go out and plant again. The next year they plant again. The same is true for colossal entrepreneurs. They follow this formula, and if it doesn't yield that colossal business they wanted this season, they do it again and again and again. They never move off the formula. They just keep trying until the environment lines up and they hit it.
Yeah, and I think that is, I mean, we see so much out there at the moment, you know, buy this program, I guarantee you will earn 10 times what you are now, I guarantee that, and there's a lot of people out there teaching people to offer these guarantees, and it's like nobody can guarantee that somebody will make a success if they buy their product, their service, or their book, but they can guarantee that it's a workable and that it is right what the content is.
Yeah, exactly. So I totally agree with what you're saying, that when someone says, I guarantee your success, I guarantee you will get this, it's actually theoretically impossible. I have no control over what you do. Yeah. I can just give you advice and direction. So how can I guarantee your success? Let alone, I can't guarantee my own success, because as we were saying earlier on, I can control the 1% of my life that I have control over, and I put all my efforts into lining me up perfectly, but the outside influencers, I have no control over, and I just have to let it be that way. If I try to control what I can't, it starts forming insanity, in fact. So put all the efforts into the formula that influences the 1%. If it doesn't come out this time, it's because the season wasn't right for you. You just plant it again next season and do it again and again and again. And if good fortune comes your way, and the timing's right, this is the formula that will take you the distance.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other chapters in the book that I really liked was the treat your customers as VIPs.
Yeah, and I talk about that in the Toilet Paper Entrepreneur too. There's a saying, like, all customers are right. The customer's always right, I think is the saying.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit different. The right customer is always right. But I think as entrepreneurs, when any customer calls, even if they are what I call a diseased pumpkin, someone that's distracting and taking away from your core competencies, someone that complains even though it's unfounded, we typically just feel that, well, they are the customer, they must be right, and we go out of our way, and it takes us off of our core competency and our focus. So treat customers like VIPs by treating the right customers like VIPs. Go the extra mile for them, always. Because once you start knowing who your right customer is and going the extra mile for them, you will start building systems that treats the right customer right, and will start attracting more right customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's and another thing that you write in here, I would just say, it's not just about the customers you have now, but the experience you give to those right customers is going to help expand to get you more right customers, isn't it?
No, that's exactly right. I'm working on new books already, believe it or not. I mean, that's how into being an author I am. And so I have 2 books in the works, and I'm not sure when this one will come out, but one of them is about this topic exactly. And what I believe is that we are all manufacturers. Even if we're in the service industry, we're manufacturers. Now, what we manufacture in the service industry is an experience. And we have to recognize that there's certain raw materials, certain sequences and processes that generate that experience. And if we master the understanding of what those raw materials are and the sequences we need to go through, we can consistently generate an experience. Disney World is an experience. And every time you go, it's generally a very joyful experience, but it's manufactured. They know how to get it there because they've investigated their experience manufacturing system so well.
Yeah, exactly. Just excuse me 1 second. I need to cough.
Cough it out.
Sorry about that.
And just so you know, I have in about 5 minutes, I need to hop off. Unfortunately, I have another call I got to do.
Okie doke. So one thing that what I want to ask you, Mike, you've mentioned all the way through this, and you mentioned it in your book, and it's in the first chapter. You had a mentor, and you still have a mentor. Now, having a mentor to me, or being part of a mastermind, is a really, really vital part of anybody's business success, no matter whether they're at the beginning or whether they are incredibly successful already. Would you agree with that?
Fully. I think there's 3 pieces every entrepreneur must have: a mentor, a coach, and I see them differently, and a mastermind. A mentor to me is someone who's been through the same experience I have, but is much further along. So for me, a mentor would be an author that's written 12 books, they've been bestsellers, they are heralded in the industry, a major name. That's a mentor.
Yeah.
A coach is someone actually from outside my industry that can see outside of the trees. I'm so entrenched in what I do, I need someone that can see the entire forest where I can only see a tree. So that's what a business coach is. Frank is my business coach.
Yeah.
There's another couple people that serve as mentors for me. And then a mastermind is a group of my peers. They don't necessarily compete with me, but they're all looking to grow their businesses in similar ways. These are men and women that I meet with very frequently, once a month, face-to-face. There's about 8 of us that meet in this one particular group, and we just share knowledge and support for each other. So I think those are the 3 elements that we all must have.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So I'm very aware of time, and I know that you're really, really busy, Mike. So I'm going to wrap it up there. And thank you so much for coming. We're going to put links to your pumpkin plan. I actually have a complete page on the website dedicated to the pumpkin plan and how people can get the book.
So amazing.
Sorry.
Yeah, so you sorry I cut out there, but thank you for doing that page. And then if you want to get the book, I'm sure you have links right on your site there. That's the best way to get it.
I have. And I wanted to ask you a question, and you're not prepared for this, and I have no idea what your answer is going to be.
Bottoms.
No, I want to know if I can persuade you to offer a free signed copy of your book to one of our listeners in.
Oh my gosh, yes. Anywhere in the world, I will sign it and ship it. But maybe you can make a fun contest behind it.
That's what I want to do.
Okay. But you have a deal, Carol. Absolutely. I'll mail a fresh, brand new autographed copy of the Pumpkin Plan anywhere in the world.
Fantastic. So details of that will go up onto the page as well under the interview when we've decided exactly what the contest is going to be.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Carol. It's been a real pleasure.